Hello everyone, today we're going to be reviewing the new Immortal Glory structure deck. Now, we're actually going to be building a deck of cards built purely out of 3 copies of the structure deck, no additional cards added in. This is an idea of the deck, what you can do just by picking that up if you've never played zombies before, or if you're maybe a more free-to-play friendly player and you don't have enough gems to sort of go whole hog into a brand new deck type. This is what you can do without any extra cards, and it is actually really fun. Now, I tried my best to make this deck work in ranked, at least platinum, diamond, above, and you're going to have a very hard time. It's not impossible to get wins. You can of course win with it, it is decent, but the way this deck functions is you utilize a lot of the cards in the deck to set up resource loops, primarily around cards like this. Agul Mazira has to be one of my new favorite cards to play in zombies. I would only play one of it in an actual zombie deck, which you'll see tomorrow, but in this version having 2 of them is really good alongside the Zombie Reborn card. And the idea is you want to be setting up these resource loops where you're continuously banishing your opponent's cards with Felgrand. You're using your Agul Mazira to protect your cards, you're using your Red Eye Zombie Lord to continually recur, continually synchro summon, Immortal Dragon, continually mill cards. So what you're doing is the main focus of the main deck is sending cards from the deck to the graveyard. So you're using your Gozuki, your Samurai Skull, your Changxi, all of these cards would be sending cards from your main deck to the graveyard, your Unizombie as well. You want to be getting things like Necroworld Banshee into the graveyard to activate your Zombie World straight from deck. You want to get things like your Agul Mazira into the graveyard to start protecting your cards, Mizuki into the graveyard to start monster reborning some of your zombies, Plague Spreader to reborn itself, Mad Mauler to reborn itself, Glow Up Loom to summon stuff from the deck. So you do get an awful lot of value out of these cards, which is why we're playing so many of them. Again, 9 of your normal summons are going to be doing it, plus if you can chain into one of your Changxi, that's going to be doing it as well. So you're going to be sending cards from your deck to the graveyard a lot. Now, the reason that this deck doesn't see a lot of success in ranked right now is because of the release of the new deck types. This particular version does not play very well against spells and traps. It's more anti-monster, sort of anti-combo type playstyle. So opponents having lots of really powerful back row cards is going to slow this deck down a lot. Your cards being banished is a massive issue as well, and right now with Runics running amok, that's also very difficult, because you can't recur things that are banished apart from your Changxi and your Agul Mazira can both recur themselves when banished. Everything else really sort of struggles with that. And lastly, you're very reliant on your normal summon. So if these guys get interrupted, unless you have a really good hand with maybe like the Jacobolan, which is a really powerful card in this version, being able to special summon itself by discarding, you really want to be discarding some of your zombies to graveyard, so he is very powerful as an additional monster and extender. If this generally gets interrupted and you don't have any sort of follow-up in the form of Jacobolan, then you're going to be having a bad time, and that is unfortunate, but it's just the truth. That's why it doesn't really function super well in ranked. But if you want to get the deck, test out zombies before you actually buy into the archetype, maybe play it in casual, you'll be seeing a lot of success and having an awful lot of fun on the casual sort of playlist, which is really good. Honestly, a casual at the minute is more fun anyway. I'm really against Runic. I think it is an extremely toxic deck type, and unfortunately zombies just have a very bad matchup against it. But again, we'll just sort of see how things shake out, how things play out. We do have a more powerful pure version of it coming up tomorrow that you can play in ranked. This is more of a casual version that you can pick up just with the structure deck, learn how to play zombies, generally how it works, and then you can step up the deck's power dramatically by adding in the cards that we're going to talk about tomorrow. But for now, if you like these types of sort of deck reviews, these free-to-play friendly guides, or reviews on many fan favorite decks when it comes to the likes of Buster Bladers, Blue Eyes, Red Eyes, Thunder Dragons, Dark Magician, anything like that, then why not subscribe to the channel? It doesn't cost you anything and it does help me out an awful lot, and feel free to like the video if you do in fact enjoy what you see coming up. And with that, let's get into the gameplay. Alrighty, getting into our first game here. We've got a pretty decent hand, but we don't have any of our good normal summons here. We're playing against an interesting deck here. This isn't casual, by the way, I should preface. we draw into the Devouring Sarcophagus. We're going to discard the Mad Mauler here to the graveyard to summon Jacobolon, which can summon itself back to the field by reducing something's level by 2, and then we're going to synchro into the Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon. We do have a bit of space here, our opponent's playing defensively, so we're going to set our Sarcophagus and pass. This is a pretty funny card. It has 2 separate effects that activate, allowing you to steal your opponent's monsters. They're going to try and pop our back row. We're just going to boost up the Necro Dragon by 1000 until the end of the turn. The primary use of these spell cards are the second effect that activate in the graveyard later on. He flips up the Squamata, takes out our zombie Necro Dragon, which is unfortunate, but he does swing in the our Sarcophagus, which means we get to steal his monster and change it to a zombie, which is amazing considering we already have a tuner on our hand. So we draw into the Necro Will Banshee here. We are going to summon Plague Spreader and then synchro off into the Immortal Dragon. Mad Mauler's going to be able to resummon itself, and then the Immortal Dragon will mill a monster from deck to graveyard, and its level becomes the difference between its original level and the level of the monster sent. So even though we had reduced its level by 2, it only considers the original levels. So Gozuki then is going to banish Jacobolon from the graveyard to summon the Banshee to the field, so we can summon out the Doom Kaiser Dragon, primarily so we can use Banshee in the graveyard to activate Zombie World straight from the deck. Then we're going to synchro summon into Skeletal Dragon Felgrand using our 2 synchro monsters, banishing the Squamata from the graveyard, or we would have anyway if we didn't get Veilered, but honestly that's completely fine. The Veiler is not that big of a problem for us. Now we can actually use Plague Spreader to return Mizuki to the top of the deck, summon itself, and synchro summon now into the Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord. The Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord basically during your opponent's turn can resurrect a zombie monster in your graveyard, which means our Felgrand is going to be able to be resurrected and thus banish an opponent's card. We're going to inflict 2800 points of damage directly and then pass turn. So we do have a pretty decent advantage over our opponent here at this stage. They don't draw anything good, they just pass turn back to us, so we're going to try and revive our Immortal Dragon here instead of Felgrand, just to get a little bit more synchro action going on during our turn. So the Immortal Dragon comes on out. It's a level 6 synchro tuner monster, which is pretty interesting. We draw into Samurai Skull, which is great, but we're going to use the Immortal Dragon first to send Mazira to the graveyard. Now that Agul Mazira, while in the graveyard, is going to be providing us with a ton of protection. We're going to summon out Chang-Chi from the deck here using Glow Up Bloom, milling another card from deck to graveyard. We're just turning our graveyard into our little play place. We're going to banish a card off of Felgrand. Mad Mauler's going to make its way back to the field so we can synchro summon again into the Doom Kaiser Dragon. Now at this point it's just BM. Doom Kaiser Dragon's going to grab his monster from his graveyard. Mizuki then is going to resurrect Mad Mauler once again, and then we're going to synchro summon for the last time into the Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon. And then we're simply going to attack directly. 4100 damage, 5100 damage, straight to the face. And bang, so that really shows off the combo aspect of this particular zombies variant. You're able to chain. Now the beginning of the game is very slow, that's what you need to watch out for. It's very slow to start off, but once you start getting cards into your graveyard, once you've milled 2 or 3 times, you're gonna really see the speed of the deck pick up. You want to utilize things like your Agul Mazira in order to protect your plays while you're doing that, which will continually protect your cards and resummon itself. And then once you've sort of got a turn or 2 under you, you're going to be able to start popping off just like you've seen in this gameplay. So that's perfect. Let's get into game number 2. Alrighty, getting into game number 2 here. This was actually a ranked game, so it was. This was, you can see right here, one of the reasons we sort of decided that maybe this deck isn't quite cut out for the ranked ladder. Something as simple as an Ash Blossom, and we're basically going to have to consider that turn over. We're going to discard the Shooting Doji just so we can potentially banish it for Gozuki next turn, but that's going to be if we survive. Spriggan's Kit here is going to search his deck for Branded Banishment, which is a much stronger card than I at first realized. That card is brutal. They're going to play the Branded Fusion here, sending 2 cards from the deck to the graveyard to summon Albion the Branded Dragon. Albion the Branded Dragon then will use Kit and Fallen of Albaz to summon out Lubellion. Lubellion then of course discarding a card, the Super Poly, to fusion summon out into Mirror Jade the Ice Blade Dragon. Now we sort of beat our opponent a little bit here. I don't think he wanted to read our cards. We made him panic into using the Mirror Jade during his turn. If he hadn't done anything there, we would have been in a much worse position, but we just sort of wanted to make him panic a little. which is fine. He's going to hit us directly here for 3,000 and then 25, but at the very least we do have another turn, and he does not have the Mirror Jade banished to hand. So that's something at least for us to work with. He does search for the Branded Fusion off of the Alba Lunatus, which puts us on a timer. We know that if we don't win very, very quickly, we're going to lose. We're going to go Gozuki this time, sending the Agul Mazira to the graveyard. Then we're going to reset the power struggle. We're going to swing in to destroy Gozuki, which is going to activate its effect to banish a card in our graveyard to summon Plague Spreader Zombie from our hand. Then, because we banished the Agul Mazira from our graveyard to activate Gozuki, we're able to summon it out to our field, which gives us, of course, our level 10 Synchro, the Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord, which by itself doesn't do much, but we're in a position where we can sort of look at it and figure out where to go. He's going to go Branded Fusion here. At any point we can revive a zombie, but we're waiting until he activates Mirror Jade in order to get the best possible timing. He's trying to set himself up for an OTK here. He's going to return Albion. Now he goes for the Branded Dragon. This is when we activate the Zombie Lord. We want him to banish the Zombie Lord because of Gozuki's ability to protect itself and revive an additional monster, summon an additional monster from our hand just to keep ourselves alive. The Agul Mazira banishes itself to protect our zombie, and then when banished will summon itself. He takes out the Gozuki. Gozuki activates to summon out the Mizuki from our hand, which gives us an additional layer of interruption and keeps us alive for an extra turn. Now he does destroy the Agul Mazira, which is sort of a mixed bag. It's a good and a bad thing, but we still have the ability to combo off here. We top deck into Jack O'Bolon, which is pretty useless to us, so we don't mind sending it back to the deck to summon our Plague Spreader. Using these two, we're going to summon out the Immortal Dragon. Now Mizuki is going to summon from our graveyard the Gozuki, so we can mill an additional card from our deck to the graveyard. We're going to send a second Mizuki. Immortal Dragon then will send the Necro World Banshee, which we will now activate to play Zombie World onto the field. Now we're playing on our field. Mizuki will summon out the Agul Mazira from the graveyard, which we will use to synchro summon into the Red Eyes Zombie Dragon Lord. We're going to take out our own Gozuki yet again, just so that he doesn't. Now the reason we did that is because our life points were so low. If we didn't, he would have used Titanic Clad swinging the Gozuki and we would have lost the game. We're able to boost up our Zombie Lord by enough attack points to take out his monster essentially. Then when our plan was during the end phase, Mirror Jade will go to destroy the field, and then we can use the Agul Mazira to protect our Zombie Lord from destruction and resummon it out to the field, granting us yet another turn of being alive. But our opponent doesn't want to play these games. He's just going to revive Mirror Jade, and then he's going to fuse into the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. This card is busted. Branded Banishment. I'm going to have to play actual Branded Despia again very soon because that card is nuts. They're going to fuse into another copy of Albion, but at this point, they're just going to go for a game. They swing for 37, and that is it. So this was ranked, so it was. Again, this is a very strong deck. Branded Despia, best deck in the game. A more sort of pure branded version of it, I guess they were playing, which is very interesting. But again, nonetheless, brutally powerful deck our opponent was playing, and we still managed to hold our own for a long time. It did take quite a few sort of advanced maneuvers just to try and keep pace, so we were behind a good bit, but at the same time it does show that the deck isn't completely hopeless. And can you only like, this is a completely free to play version using just the structure deck. Can you imagine if we were able to play the likes of Ballardrock in here and how much havoc that would be able to wreak on our opponent? So again, it just sort of shows the potential of what could be happening. But anyway, I'm not going to ramble. Let's get into game number 3. Alrighty, getting into game 3 here, and we actually get the ability to go first this time, and we open up with Zombie World. This is a much stronger hand than what we have been seeing. We're going to pitch the Plague Spreader to the graveyard, return the Necro World Banshee since we don't need it, and then we're going to summon out our Immortal Dragon. Immortal Dragon pitching the Mazira to the graveyard, that gives us our protection. Jack O'Bolon's going to give us a bit of an interruption. Mizuki then is going to also resurrect the Mazira here, so we can synchro into our Red Eyes Zombie Dragon Lord. So this is a pretty decent setup here. We have a bit of an interruption here in the form of Jack O'Bolon being able to take a card from our opponent's grave. Unfortunately, we're playing against Trap Trick. I wanted to show this one off because it does show the other major weakness of the deck, trying to play against back row heavy scenarios. Our opponent goes and activates their Phantom Knights card. They are going to try and pop our zombie world, which is unfortunate. It's going to force us to use our Jackabola now, or we basically don't get to use it at all, taking a monster from his graveyard. His Sarah then is going to grab him Bottomless Trap Hole from his deck. He's going to swing in here, he's going to take out his own monster. Now the reason that's still beneficial for us is because when it's destroyed after being summoned by Jackabolon, it does in fact get banished, which is good. We do misplay very slightly, I think, coming up here. It doesn't make a massive difference, but it is unfortunate. We're going to go Bottomless Trap Hole, flip our Samurai Skull face down. Jackabolon comes back out to the field as well. We're going to summon Unizombie, and he is once again going to Floodgate Trap Hole us. But that is both of the materials off of his monster at least taken care of, but he still has 5 other back row cards to try and play through. Here's where we misplay slightly, where we should have tried to take out his Exceed monster first, because it protects his Sarah from destruction. We didn't realize that at first, but again, at the end of the day, he still had this card ready to go. We had our Agul Mazira to protect us though, so Agul Mazira makes its way out to the field after protecting our zombie dragon, but it does get banished and destroyed yet again. That removes that layer of protection that would otherwise have been infinitely recurring. The Red-Eyed Zombie Dragon Lord will banish the Jackabolon to try and resurrect itself onto the field, but our opponent also has Called by the Grave. They just have everything to try and stop us here, and the banishment of our zombies is very, very detrimental. Normally the Agul Mazira doesn't care too much about being banished, but it doesn't like being banished twice in one turn. That's usually very bad. That usually spells the end for that particular card. They're going to take out our monster, but we do get to revive our Immortal Dragon, but to little effect. We maybe should have held off on that until he destroyed the Unizombie instead. That was a small misplay from ourselves, but again, such is life. We draw into our second copy of Agul Mazira, which does at the very least allow us an additional layer of protection, but it's not going to mean very much here against so much opposition from our opponent. They're going to activate their Murmillo here to set a hole directly from their deck. They're yet again playing with a full set of a full set of back row cards, as well as having all of their level 4s on board to go into their Time Thief Redoer. But yeah, Labyrinth Trap Trick is a real menace, so it is for this particular deck. We're able to protect our Unizombie, but unfortunately it's not going to mean too much because he can simply take it out using that monster, and then the Labyrinth monster will take out our Agul Mazira. We are in a rough spot. We need to draw a monster to get any sort of pressure up and running. We do draw into the Shuten Doji. He steals one of our zombie worlds, which we're not really a fan of. We go to summon Shuten Doji. He tries to banish us off of Bottomless Trap Hole. He just is trying everything in his power to stop us. But yet again, our Agul Mazira is coming in clutch, protecting our monster, and then resummoning itself to the field. I really love this card. Shuten Doji is going to try and draw us a miracle card, and we draw a Jackabolon, which is unfortunately useless in this scenario because we need a monster to discard for it. Icy Dragon's Prison, or whatever the name of that card is a real... Ice Dragon's Prison is a real menace against this deck. He's basically going to be able to take any of our zombies and banish our whole field. He destroys a card remaining in our hand. This guy, he's just got everything. There's nothing we can do about this. I'm pretty sure it just goes to a quick end here. Yeah, he's going to summon a Jackabolon, banish both it and our monster. And yeah, pretty much that's it. We decide to scoop it up. There's no possible way we can win that. Rough matchup. That's the thing. The deck doesn't play very well against back row. It does sort of play much better against monsters because it can continually banish monsters off of Felgrand. Felgrand was of no use in this duel. That's why we didn't summon it. It maybe could have took out his Sarah and things like that, but ultimately it would simply have been destroyed or banished upon summon, and it wouldn't have provided too much value. It's unfortunate, but again, like I said at the beginning, this is completely free to play. This deck is only going to get better the more you invest into it, and I have a much more powerful version of it coming up very soon. So yes, a little bit unfortunate in terms of the matchups we were having, and the meta isn't super friendly to zombies right now. Everything is very back row and banishment based, which is not great for us, but we are going to continue to try our best to get some wins here. Let's get into the deck profile and we'll talk a little bit more about why we've built it the way we've built it. Alrighty, so getting into the deck profile now. Of course, anyone who has ever played zombies before recognizes that the main goal of zombies is to put cards from your deck into the graveyard, because that is where the fun happens. So a lot, if not all, of these cards have effects that either A, activate in the graveyard, or B, send other cards to the graveyard so that they can activate. Starting off with the normal summons, we're not, well, I mean, I guess we could do it sort of back to front, but I want to do it in a specific order so you understand what's going on. We have Gozuki, Samurai Skull, and Unizombie as your main normal summons. So there's 9 of them. There's also kind of Shooting Doji, but he doesn't do the same job. So 9 normal summons. What do they all have in common? They all send cards from the deck to the graveyard. Samurai Skull, when normal summoned, will trigger effect, send a zombie from deck to graveyard. Gozuki has an ignition effect where you can send a zombie from deck to graveyard. And Unizombie is the best of the 3 because it has 2 effects. You can send a zombie from deck to graveyard to change the level of a monster on the field by 1, but you can also discard a zombie from your hand, discard a card from your hand in order to increase the level of a monster on the field by 1 as well. Which means that if you have cards in your hand that you want to be in the graveyard, like Mizuki, Necroworld Banshee, Devouring Sarcophagus, Agul Mazura, you have all of those cards, even Plague Spreader and Glow Up Bloom, you would rather have all of those cards in your graveyard than in your hand, so Unizombie is better than the other 2 in that it can not only send from deck to graveyard, it also sends from hand to graveyard. So these are your main sort of normal summons. All they do is plump up your graveyard. Now, what does everything else do around that? Let's start off with our low-leveled monsters we want in a grave. You want Glow Up Bloom. While Zombie World is face up on your field, Glow Up Bloom is going to special summon any level 5 or higher zombie from your deck straight to the field. If you don't have Zombie World on the field, it will add it to your hand instead, which in the case of Agul Mazura is still pretty decent, as well as Jagabolon, but you would much rather use this card while you have Zombie World face up, almost every single time. Plague Spreader Zombie is a tuner. Plague Spreader Zombie and Mad Mauler, I'll lump these 2 together, are tuners that can resummon themselves from the graveyard. Plague Spreader Zombie does it by returning a card from your hand to the top of your deck, and the Mad Mauler does it by targeting a level 6 or higher zombie monster you control, reducing its level by 2, and then resummoning itself. So the Mad Mauler has virtually 0 cost, and it also doesn't banish itself after use. So in that way, it's probably the better of the 2, but at the same time, the level modulation doesn't always work to your benefit. Sometimes it does in summoning, you know, the Necro Zombie Dragon, but sometimes it sort of is counterintuitive to what you're trying to do. In those circumstances, Plague Spreader Zombie can still be deemed the better of the 2, but they both sort of serve a unique role. That's why I play 2 of each. Shooting Doji is basically a backup normal summon. You can banish 2 zombie monsters from your graveyard to draw an extra card. He's basically the reason I wanted this guy as a second effect, to target a banished zombie monster and place it on the top of your deck. A lot of your zombies will banish themselves whenever they're using their effects, so Shooting Doji is a decent way of reusing some of those cards. But ultimately, he's definitely one of the weaker cards in the deck. You might even want to get rid of him. Mizuki, while in the graveyard, can banish itself to resurrect any zombie in your graveyard. Definitely one of the better ones to be sending to the grave because of its flexibility and versatility. One of the main cards of the deck, 100%. The Necroworld Banshee can banish itself from the field or the graveyard to activate Zombie World straight from your deck. Now, because you're activating it straight from the deck, this card cannot be Ash Blossomed. It cannot be hit with Call by the Grave because it banishes itself as cost, and ultimately it is very, very difficult for your opponent to stop. So absolutely love to see this card. Very, very strong. You want to max it out of 3 of and 3 of because Zombie World dramatically enhances the effectiveness of this deck. By changing all monsters on both players' fields and graveyards to zombies, this is even more powerful in the full power version of the deck. But Necroworld Banshee, definitely a very powerful card. The Devouring Sarcophagus. Now, this is a bit of a meme card, admittedly, but it's actually surprisingly, it comes up considering how easy it is to send to the graveyard. You'll use this card a little bit more than what you were maybe expecting. So its effect on the field is mediocre. When it's destroyed by battle, you take control of the monster that destroyed it and change it to a zombie, which is, you know, it's all well and cool. But that, you know, requires you to have played it to the field, which normally means it's eating up your normal summon, and ultimately not that great. Secondary to that though, while it's in the graveyard and your zombie monster is destroyed by battle, you can banish this card and then take control of the monster under those circumstances. So that effect is significantly more useful because if you're already playing with some of your big zombies on the field and one of them gets destroyed by battle, then your Devouring Sarcophagus will allow you to steal that opponent's monster, which means your zombie didn't go to the graveyard for no reason. So that's pretty good, especially considering how easy it is to send from deck to graveyard. That's all of the low level monsters that you want to have in the graveyard. Getting into the higher level monsters, you do play quite a lot of them. And you play multiple copies for a reason. You're playing the double Changshi Desperado. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But basically, it is yet another Foolish Burial. Send a zombie from deck to the graveyard. Now, if this card is banished, you can banish another zombie in the graveyard to special summon it out to the field, but it does get returned to the deck if it is sent to the graveyard yet again. So it's not infinitely recurring like a Ghoul Mazira is, but the Changshi definitely has that a little bit of recursion then whenever it's banished, especially considering it is very easy to banish with the likes of Gozuki. So the Changshi's effect are definitely very, very powerful. I'm a big fan of this card, being able to just Foolish Burial an additional monster. Jacobolon is one of your primary extenders in the deck. You can discard a zombie to special summon this card from your hand. This, alongside some of your other tuners, gives you some real sort of synchro options, as well as the ability to put some of your useful monsters into the graveyard. To be perfectly honest, his primary use is the discard. Like that's how powerful your graveyard is. You just want cards in your graveyard. That's why he's here. And finally, what I would consider almost the boss monster of the deck, definitely one of my favorites. I don't know if I'm just like gassing this card up or what, but I'm a big fan of this. A Ghoul Mazira. Basically, if a zombie on your field will be destroyed by battle or card effect, banish this card from your hand or your graveyard instead. Now, once per turn, when this card is banished, it will special summon itself automatically to the field. So this is an amazing card for protecting yourself, especially if your opponent is trying to go for the game, and it's also really useful for synchro plays, considering it's a level 8 that can recur itself. It also has the option that when summoned using its own effect, you can reduce its own level by 1. That opens up some doors here, especially if you're using certain other cards. It's not too useful in this version of the deck, unless you're going to combo it with Mad Mauler to go into your Necro Dragon. Again, you can do that, but that's so sort of far-fetched and in between that we're not going to worry too much about it. Its primary goal is the protection of all of your cards, as well as its infinite recursion to keep you alive and keep you in the game. Massive fan of this card. Getting into the spells, there's only really a handful of them. We have the 3 zombie cards, and then we have Zombie World. So basically 4 different zombie cards. Number 1 is Necronize. If you control a level 5 or higher zombie, target a monster your opponent controls and take control of it until the end of the turn. Great for extending your synchro plays, very, very powerful. You have Zombie Reborn. Target a zombie in your graveyard and banish another monster that has the same name from your deck or extra deck to re-summon the monster in the graveyard. That's why we're doubling up on our big boss monsters, just in case. And the fact that these guys actually benefit from being banished as well. So this is a fantastic card comboing together with the Ghoul Mazira as well as the Changshi, and it sort of plays in with Jacobolon as well. We're playing sort of multiples of everything in the deck for that exact reason. And then we have the Zombie Power Struggle. Zombie Power Struggle will boost up a zombie on the field either by giving it 1,000 attack points or by taking 1,000 attack points away. Don't forget, Zombie World is going to be active most of the time, meaning all of your opponent's monsters will also be zombies. So you can use this to reduce their monsters' attack points by 1,000 if you need to. Now, these 3 cards, what they all have in common is a second effect that allows you to target a banished zombie, return the banished zombie to the deck, and then you can reset these cards from the graveyard. And all 3 of them have that same effect, which is the main reason we're actually playing them. Their main effects are decent. Some of them are mediocre, especially Power Struggle is a little bit mediocre, but the ability to replay some of your banished zombies is very, very powerful. So that's why we're playing those in there. And that does it for the entire main deck. Like I said, the main deck is just Mill City, send from deck to graveyard, send from hand to graveyard, just send everything to the graveyard, and then play the game from there. The extra deck then, of course the extra deck, it's 15 cards. You were given 5 in the structure deck. We have no options nor ability to choose anything. We just tripled up on everything the extra deck gave us. Doomkaiser's the weakest out of them. You can when this card is summoned, you can steal a zombie from your opponent's graveyard, and they will all be zombies thanks to Zombie World, so that's kind of neat. Its main reason for being here is just a level 6 non-tuner. That's it. Immortal Dragon, being its counterpart, the level 6 tuner, has a very useful effect of being able to send another zombie from deck to graveyard, and its level changes to the level difference between his original level and the monster that you send. So if you send a level 4, he becomes a level 2. If you send a level 7, he becomes a level 1. So basically, you can modulate his level very easily, as well as taking advantage of having more cards in your graveyard. The Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon is your primary beater. This card gets 100 attack and defense for each zombie on the field and in each graveyard combined. He's usually going to be massive. If another zombie is destroyed by battle, you can special summon a zombie from either graveyard to your field, and remember, everything is a zombie. The Zombie Necro Dragon basically boosts itself way up, beats over an opponent's monster, and then you get to resurrect a zombie from either graveyard. Pretty strong, definitely one of the more powerful cards. I think it's, in terms of just going for lethal, it's definitely your biggest monster by far. Next we have the Skeletal Dragon Felgrand. This is like the actual boss monster of the deck, if you will. The next one up is basically just to assist it, but this is the primary card you want to be using for interruption, and it has two primary forms of interruption. Number one, when it's special summoned, you can banish a monster on your opponent's field or in their graveyard. And number two, if while this card is face up and another monster is summoned from the graveyard, you can target a monster on the field and negate its effects until the end of the turn. So basically, what will normally happen is if you have the likes of your goal really is to go into the next monster. I'll talk very briefly about this card. Basically, the Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord will, during your opponent's turn, revive a zombie in your graveyard, or during your turn it can revive itself from the graveyard by banishing a zombie on your field. Now, these two sort of work hand in hand, because you will either have just this monster on the field and then the Felgrand Dragon in the graveyard, in which case during your opponent's turn you can resummon Felgrand off of the Zombie Dragon Lord, and then Felgrand will banish a monster your opponent controls. Or, if Felgrand is already face up and you still have the ability to use the Zombie Lord, then you'll be able to resummon a monster off of the Zombie Lord that will trigger Felgrand's effect to negate a monster your opponent controls. Or during your own turn, you'll be constantly summoning from the graveyard. But yeah, basically these two go hand in hand. Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord helps activate both of these Skeletal Dragon's effects, and basically you'll get banishing and negating all of your opponent's cards. So the deck itself, it's not super complicated. I'm gonna get a drink, my throat is dry as hell. It's not super complicated. The deck itself is really simple. Realistically, you send cards from deck to graveyard, you revive cards from graveyard, you synchro summon, you beat their ass. That's the deck. And it is a ton of fun. For being that simple, it is an absolute blast. And it only gets more powerful whenever you realize that it has synergy with virtually everything. You know what I mean? There's no limit to the amount of things you can do with this. It took me quite a number of hours to find out what I wanted the final version of this deck to look like, which you'll be seeing tomorrow. But yeah, this deck, whole lot of fun. Anyone who hasn't played zombies before, pick it up. The value is insane in terms of the cards you're getting. Really good value. So many of these cards are so powerful. But yes, that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it. If you haven't already, consider subscribing and liking the video if you did actually like what you were seeing. If you have any suggestions, questions, I don't know, complaints, you want to tell me how your day went, leave it in the comments below. I get round to everyone who leaves a comment as best as I possibly can. Yeah, anything else you want to hop in a Discord, by all means, we're all there waiting on you. And that should pretty much wrap us up for the day. You guys take care. See you in the next one.